Do you know when I get up in front of the people at the conventions, at the meetings, until that microphone is right in front of my face, so help me God, I don't know what I'm going to say.
Well, some of the people are asking kind of dumb questions too on occasion.
Well, you get many of the same questions over again, but you try to think of a little new twist, and you can't. You can only tell it as it is, as my friend Howard Cosell would say.
It's kind of ironic in the sense that you were, I think, a feature player and a star of your own time, but people today are asking questions, obviously, of Laurel and Hardy.
That's right.
And I suppose that perhaps, your fame will be derivative in the sense that the famous scenes of the pie fight in the Battle of the Century. And
little spin-offs that they remember.
How did you decide at some point in your life that you wanted to be an actress?
Do you know, we were just talking about that a little while ago. I must have been born wanting to be in motion pictures. You notice I didn't say movies, because in those days we didn't say movies, we said motion pictures. And all my life, as long as I can remember, that's all I ever wanted. And I made motion pictures by the way of the stage. It was kind of a stepping stone.
Did you start making pictures back east, or did you go to Hollywood?
No, in Hollywood. I came, as a matter of fact, the last time I was on the stage in a show was right here in San Francisco. And I can't remember the name of the theater. I was 16 years old. It was a Ziegfeld show, Sally. I suppose you could look up find out what year that was. 1924. Don't tell anybody. But I left the show here and went down to Hollywood, and I worked for Al Christie. And the first thing I ever did was a pratfall, wouldn't you know? And people remember me in these comedies, but the feature pictures I made were all dramatic roles. Nobody ever heard of them. They don't remember those at all, but they do remember anything with Laurel and Hardy, and some with Charlie Chase, although he hasn't been publicized like Stan and Babe. But I was a comic in shorts and a dramatic actress when I made feature films.
You come out of a good city because so many of the stars and the directors had their start in San Francisco, and I think of Frank Capra, of course.
Oh, that's one man I wish I had worked for.
Capra worked for a short time with the Roach, and then went on to Columbia and did his own career at Columbia. Of course, he was from San Francisco and did, I think, he did a little bit of.
Wait for your laugh.
Were you with Roach first, or did you go to another studio?
No, first studio I worked for was Al Christie's. Christie Studio with, Bobby Vernon. I don't know whether these names mean anything to the people nowadays, because that was a few years ago. And
please tell us. I know a lot of young people specifically would not know of Christie's, but this is sort of oral history in the sense that we're trying to recreate and find a past that was not well documented when it was happening. How many films did Christie's make, and what sort of feature films did Vernon make?
I don't know how many feature films Bobby Vernon made, but he did make many, many shorts for Al Christie. He was one of the big stars on the lot. And Bill Dooley from vaudeville made pictures there, and a whole lot of people that were on the stage. And when I was in Sally at the Biltmore Theater in Los Angeles, I was invited to the Christie studio to see the inside of a studio and so forth. And the casting director, his name was Harry Edwards. He said, "Miss Garvin, if you ever want to be in pictures, you have a job here." Well, needless to say, that's all I ever wanted. So I gave my notice in and finished out my 2 weeks up here in San Francisco and went back to Los Angeles and went right to work for Al Christie.
And the first thing was a practice.
The first thing, slipping on a piece of butter It was a cafe scene, and Bobby Vernon flips a piece of butter off a knife, and it lands on the floor, and I'm supposed to be one of the chorus girls. And boom, the feet go up, and I take my fall. That was my introduction. And I guess my exit was more or less the same way.
So many of the early actors and players, and so much of the early comedy was from vaudeville or from like the Follies and that sort of thing. And yet, I can't imagine taking pratfalls on the stage 2 or 3 times a day for in a show. Or at some point, they must have said that this is visual humor is what we're going to go for, and the pratfall had to be originated.
I don't know. I think a lot of the old vaudevillians, such as Keaton, came from an acrobatic family, and Buster West and John West. They were acrobatic dancers, and they could take falls and spins on their head and everything. And I didn't know, for one thing, that you padded yourself to take falls. I just came down on my all, that's all. But I loved every minute of it. Oh, it was wonderful.
How long before, when you were working with Christie, did Joe Rock find out about you when you worked with Stan Laurel before he came with Laurel and Hardy?
I beg your pardon, I didn't quite get
How about when you were doing the Al Christies? How did Joe Rock find out about you?
Gosh, I don't remember. That's hard to remember. I only stayed with Christie for about 4 or 5 months. And I was just doing little bits and little things, and I wanted to do a lead. And he said, "Oh, in time, you will now. Just be patient." And I said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Christie, I quit." So I started the next day across the street at the studio. It was called Century. And that's where we made the pictures in 3 and 4 days, and maybe make 2 at a time. And it was somewhere around that time that I went to work for Joe Rock at Universal. How I got there, I don't remember. But they hear things about this one or that one, and so I worked with Stan Laurel then, and I thought, oh, he was so clever to be able to do all the things that he could do, write, direct, act. He did everything there. So I worked with him, opposite him, doing leads. Also, he was a director in pictures that I was in. And then at Educational, made maybe 100 or more pictures there.
We should point out that Educational wasn't what we think of educational films.
No, no, they were educational comedies, mermaid comedies, and they had people like Lapino Lane and Lloyd Hamilton and Al St. John. They were all the featured comics. I worked with all of them.
Few people today would know Al St. John, but if I said Al Fuzzy St. John,
they'd remember, yes.
One of the great sidekicks in
Westerns.
Up into the 50s, I guess. And he did some feature comedy, not shorts, he did feature comedies as well.
That's right, yes. So he was a clever... Now there's another example. He was more or less an acrobat. He could do those high falls, great big fall backward things. But they were all prepared. I didn't know until it was too late, after I had bruises the size of watermelons. Then somebody said, well, don't you wear padding, or don't you wear something to protect yourself? I didn't know about protecting myself. I fell on concrete or rocks or anything else. Just ask me and I would do it.
Did Stan teach you after that? Did he teach you how to take a pratfall or anything?
Oh, no. No, that's something I don't think you can teach anyone. I think that's something you have to learn for yourself.
We've gone now from Al Christie